Why every woman needs marriage. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Why everyone needs marriage, why every woman needs marriage, and why marriage is so much more than just a piece of paper, right? That whole marriage is just a piece of paper is a justification by people who are either afraid of marriage in some way and what that comes with, or is hopeless believing that they can ever get married, right? It's a way. So if you're afraid of marriage, of course you're going to use that excuse as a piece of paper so that you don't have to face your fears, right? It's your own bullshit excuse. And if you are hopeless believing that you will ever find that right person, or that right person that you already have doesn't want to marry you, then of course you can just use the justification of just a piece of paper so you can feel better about yourself and not feel all of that pain that comes with that. But every woman needs marriage. So why is this, right? I am a really big believer in marriage. I'm married to my wife. I've been married to her for 7 years. I wasn't always a big believer in marriage. In fact, here's a funny thing. When my wife and I first started dating, I recall this vaguely. I believe I said, marriage is just a piece of paper. And of course, I'm pretty much the most anti-government person that somebody could be. And, I don't want government in my lives and not my butthole any more than anyone else does. I mean, some people love the government in their butthole, but, I really don't want the government to have anything to do with me in my life. So that's, that was certainly part of my, where I was at the time. The main reason I married my wife at the time, this is before Polarity, right? This is before a lot of my more current belief systems that I have. The reason that I chose to marry her is because she needed it. And I could feel that. And I didn't marry her because I thought that she would dump me if I decided not to marry her. I married her because I wanted to do something for her that she really needed for that safety, right? Because for a woman, that's a big part of what marriage really is. You know that saying, well, talk is cheap. That's one saying, and I got another one. It's on the tip of my tongue. It's like don't. It's basically don't believe what a man says. Focus on what a man does. Okay, so if a man says, "Hey, I want to be with you forever," don't believe that shit. I mean, have faith in it, sure, but like, unless he's actually taking real action and moving towards greater commitment somehow, how are you going to actually trust that? Because for a woman, this is a really, really big deal for a woman, and marriage really is more about the woman than the man. Like, let's be really honest. There's a lot of reasons for that. I chose to marry my wife because I love her and I wanted to give her what she needed, which was that security and understanding of my inner vision that, yes, I am going to be with you forever and fully committed to you through everything. Okay. But it's more for the woman because if you think about this, the whole term market value, there's some BS around that, but we're just going to generalize here. So in general, in general, okay, over time, a man's market value, right, like how valuable he is to women in the dating market, either goes up or it's much easier for it to go up, right, as he becomes more successful, more wealthy, more capable of provision, more responsible, more of a man in every way, right? So it goes up over time. For a woman, it does on average go down, right? Now there's so much that a woman can do as she gets older, right, to increase her market value, right? Like if she's masculinized, it doesn't matter if you're 20 and youthful. If you're really masculinized, you actually have quite low market value to a man, because why does any kind of healthy man want a masculinized woman, right? So if you're quite masculinized, you can do so much to increase your value to other men who would want to date you over time, as even as you get older, right? you can actually have higher market value as a 50-year-old than a 25-year-old who's super masculinized and just bitchy and unhappy and everything, right? But in general, over time, a woman's market value does go down. So if she is wasting all of this time with a man who is not truly committed to her in her 20s, let's say, what's going to happen is she is going to have lower chances of finding that a great man over time. That's just what happens, right? And so marriage is that security that a woman needs to be able to let go and fully open up and to fully follow a man's leadership and fully receive him in every way. That's really important. And for someone that coaches women, I would say you should really focus on having that as something that you need, and realizing that you need, and admitting that it's something that you need. And by the way, there's lots of men out there who are still willing to get married. Yeah, there's lots of bitter, whatever men out there as well that have written that off. Well, don't date those men. Don't date those men, because they're I mean, just the fact that they're no longer interested in marriage shows you so much else about them, which is a problem, right? Now, here's something else that's really important about marriage. When I first, when my wife and when I discovered Polarity, which was the absolute game changer in our marriage, right? Our marriage was okay. And then when we had our baby boy, it actually, we had a lot of problems that came up. But then we actually had a lot more problems as I started implementing Polarity into my marriage and led my wife into letting go of control and being permissive and all of that stuff. And I did a half-assed job of it because I wasn't trained in it. I was making it up as I went along. I didn't know at the time. I didn't have my academy program. I didn't even have my master class to go to. I was just figuring it all out by trial and error. So there were points in our marriage during that time where I believe she was very close to divorcing me. And I believe that if we were not married, like if we were just in a boyfriend-girlfriend situation, she would have broken up with me. And I also believe, and I can say this with pretty much certainty, that if we were not married, I would have broken up with her during that process. Why? Because I wouldn't have made that promise to her, to be committed to her, to love her no matter what, to basically be the best man that I could be for her, right? This polarization process was unbelievably difficult and painful for both of us. Lots of mistakes, lots of everything. But for me, because I had made that promise to her, I looked her in the eyes when we got married. And I told her I would love her forever. I told her that I would be with her forever. And I take my promises very seriously. So when the times got really, really, really fucking tough in our marriage, and we've dealt with some really big stuff, not just the polarity process, but lots of other stuff as well. Like our child died, for example. Like that's a really big thing that can completely derail relationships. My process was, okay, I need to figure this out. I need to figure out a solution. I'm feeling really increasingly irritated with my wife. How do I fix it? How do I fix myself? How do I fix the dynamic between us so that I can fulfill my promise no matter what? That's not just a piece of fucking paper, right? I'm swearing for emphasis here because people, what's the word? Belittle marriage. I can't think of the right word, but marriage is, despite the government meddling in it, marriage is a sacred thing. It is a sacred thing, and it is much more than just a piece of paper. Okay, it is a sacred promise between two people to continue loving each other. Now, you could say, okay, why do you need the piece of paper for that? Okay, fair enough. Why do you need the piece of paper for that? Well, the people say a lot of shit, right? People say stuff that they mean at the time, and then as soon as it's possible to things change, and then they kind of change their mind. Now, of course, unfortunately today, even when people get married, uh, that can also be true, right? It's not like it's a bulletproof thing. People are often get into marriage and they're not serious about it, and they don't really understand themselves well enough. They don't understand that level of commitment. They're not mature enough. They're not grown-ups enough to understand what this kind of commitment means. And so I've said stuff like with prenups, for example. I should do another video on this. If you need to get a prenup, then don't get married. You're not ready for marriage. You're not enough of a grown-up for marriage. But what about all this stuff? Yeah, you're not ready for marriage. If you don't have that level of trust in your partner, if you don't have that level of trust in yourself, that's fine. Okay, that's fine. Like, continue being in a relationship, continue loving each other, but leave marriage for that true commitment where you are 100% all in and you don't have one foot out the door. You're not protecting yourself in any kind of way, right? And the same thing with, a woman, having a fear of the man controlling all the money. Okay, if you're not willing to have your man control all the money, then you're not ready for marriage. You're ready for, you might be ready for a relationship. That's fine, but you're not ready for that level of commitment. Marriage is something very special. It's something very sacred. Okay? Marriage is something is for two people who, it's not just about love, right? Love is just one aspect of marriage. We're talking about a really, really big level of commitment here. And the tragedy that we're in right now is that we live in a society of children in adult bodies. That's just the truth. Okay, children in adult bodies, and children are not capable of making major decisions like that. It's sort of like all the nonsense with transgenderism and having children make decisions about cutting off their wieners when they're 10. People, adults that are still in the mentality of being children, they shouldn't be making the decision to get married because they're not grown up enough, right? So I have a really big standard for marriage, like, and people really need to be retaught, I think, about how important that bond is, that that the sacredness of marriage, right? But women do need that. Okay, so getting back to what was even the topic of this, why women need marriage and why it's much more than a piece of paper. Yeah. So women need that so that they're able to fully let go. And so the first step to that is for women to recognize in themselves that this is a need, that security. Oh yeah, so this was the other thing I wanted to talk about. Does it need to be a government sanctioned whatever? Okay, not necessarily. Okay, like, I have my beliefs around it, but it's not necessarily about that. It's more just about how can you be sure that a man is actually dead serious about being committed to you for life? How can you be sure? So one way that you can have that security is a man who, you know, tells you to your face that it's a lifelong commitment, and you sign whatever pieces of paper and all that kind of stuff, right? Oh, this is the example I wanted to give. This is perfect. So it's like men and women signing up for my academy program, okay, to do this work. It would be the equivalent of people saying, like, yeah, I'm totally going to join your academy program, totally going to do it. I never hear from them again, right? That certainly happens. Because at the time, I don't think that they were lying to me. It's just that they thought at the time that they're totally committed, but then they weren't. Where the rubber meets the road is when we are on a call together and then they pay the money for the program to work with me, right? They've actually put their money where their mouth is. That's when yeah, they're actually committed. They didn't just believe that they were committed, they're committed. And that's where typically all the fear comes up, right? It's It's like, oh, they weren't scared before committing because they weren't on the edge of the cliff about to dive off. But when they get to that place of commitment, oh, all this stuff comes up. Holy shit, I'm actually committed. And oh my God, this is actually the sacrifice. This is everything that it means, right? And then this is for real. So marriage is the same kind of thing. It's like you can say every day of your life that you're so committed to this woman, or the woman is so committed to this man, but until there is that piece of paper, until you're standing in front of each other, and still you're going through with it legally, it doesn't mean shit. It doesn't mean shit. Now, to be fair, right? So that's like the legal aspect of things. One of the really cool things about marriage, I believe personally, is that you're standing up in front of the people that you love and trust and respect, and everyone that's in your lives and everything, and you're making that declaration, right? So it's like there's a lot of social pressure, and this is like traditionally, I believe anyway, that this is probably a big part of why it's like this with marriage. It's like you're not even just promising it to your partner. It's like you're telling the world, you're telling your community, your tribe, your family, I am promising this, right? So even without the piece of paper, if you just did that, like, we're going to get married, we're going to keep the government out of it, because the government sucks ass, and you stand up in front of everybody, and you declare that, well, that would be a lot more than nothing. Okay. And I in many ways, I'm anti-tradition, much less so now. Like, as I get older, and all the polarity stuff, I used to be much more anti-tradition, just like, oh, it's inefficient and it's a waste of time and it's outdated and all this bullshit. But there's a lot to be said for tradition. There's a lot of wisdom in why we do things the way that we do. And I believe that getting married in front of other people, and making that promise to your beloved, in front of everyone, there's a reason for that. Okay. And it's because you're really putting your money where your mouth is, so to speak. Because it's, and it's not that it is a fails, it's not like it's bulletproof, right? Because again, lots of people do that, as well as the government contract part, and then they still divorce, unfortunately. But it makes it way less likely, because to go back on your word, it's like, wow, I did this in front of everybody, and they all know, like, this is what I promised and everything, and it's embarrassing, and there's a lot of shame, and as there should be, as there should be. Now I'm not shaming anyone that has gotten divorced, and there's lots of there are valid reasons for divorce too, right? That's the other thing. There are marriages that are highly abusive, and really, really big problems, and I have no problem with people getting out of them, those, right? Like, those are nightmares. But before anybody divorces, before anybody breaks their lifelong commitment, the question is, have you tried everything? And if you haven't tried polarity, and you haven't been trained in polarity, you haven't gotten support by a coach, hint hint, me, in polarized communication to shift this all around, then you haven't done crap. You haven't done anything useful. You haven't actually focused on what the only real solution is to create a highly, a dream relationship, the way that men and women are supposed to operate together in marriage. One man, one woman, monogamous. A man only has eyes for his woman. A woman only has eyes for her man. High attraction, high connection. They only want to be together. The man is fully devoted to his woman through his leadership, and the woman is fully submissive and trusting her man through her submission. That's the way it's supposed to be, and that's a beautiful thing. So yeah, that's the main thing I really wanted to talk about. And so for women that are listening to this, and you realize that's, man, I want to get married. I want to have my devoted man who claims me for life, right? What a sexy thing. What an amazing, sexy thing, where a woman can just fully let go and be, knowing that a man loves her that much and is that committed to her, committed to taking care of her. That's an important thing. First of all, I'm going to say two things about this. First of all, before you even consider marriage, you need to be polarized. You need to know how to express all of your needs, all of your feelings. You need to have worked through all of those fears. You need to have a man who's demonstrated that he when you express yourself, that he will take care of you and love you and cherish you, and that you're safe to do that. You don't hold back. You're not compliant. You're not being a doormat. You're not dishonoring your heart to please him. You're not doing any of that garbage, right? You need to be sure before getting married, because this is a very important, sacred bond, and it's hard to extricate yourself from it too. Easier today than 100 years ago, but it's still difficult. You want to be sure, because to be trapped in something like that is an absolute train wreck disaster. And I was lucky. Like, in many ways, I was lucky that despite not having known about polarity before I got married, so I made some big mistakes just because I didn't know. It was out of ignorance. I'm not perfect. Still not perfect today, but I try to be. But I was lucky in the sense that I figured it out, using all of the self-improvement stuff that I had done prior, and then stumbling into polarity, and then basically figuring out, like through trial and error, figuring out masculine communication and how to lead a woman, and learning how to teach my wife feminine communication and how to lead her into being a woman for me. I got really lucky, because if I didn't figure that out, I don't know how things would have worked out. I don't think very well with where we were. So figure all that stuff out first, and which means get training on it, right? Which means read my books, which means join my masterclass, which means ideally join my academy program, right? Start with a masterclass, right? If you're like, oh, this is great, like I'm loving this content, I want to know more. Okay, good. Join our masterclass, where we will teach you exactly what this polarized communication looks like, this polarized dynamic, and how to solve relationship problems, also dating problems, right? If you're single, or early dating, how to communicate your needs, in a way where a man's going to be inspired to step up and take care of you. And also, any men listening, to lead a woman into fully respecting you, trusting you, and submitting to you. And we'll role play it for you. We'll show you exactly what it looks like. It's a pretty damn awesome, informative 2-hour experience. To sign up, go to relationshipofyourdreams.com. relationshipyourdreams.com. Sign up. Our next one is the end of July, and if you miss this one, you'll have to wait all the way till September. You'll have wasted your whole summer not moving really quickly towards a polarized dynamic, polarizing yourself. You're just missing out. relationshipyourdreams.com. I will see you there. We'll have an awesome time. That's it for this video.